It's time to learn with our friend Clive. So grab your brush, have a great time.
Hello and welcome, and thank you very much for joining me in the studio today, where we paint away the stress of everyday life. But I'm not here to paint away the stress today. I'm here to mix some skin tones. Now if you look at my skin, you can see there's a darker side, there's a mid-tone there, and there's some highlights and there's some shadows, all in the grooves of my old wrinkly old skin here in Wales. But the thing I want to bring your attention to is not all skin is pink. There's Asian, there's European, there's Indian, there's African, there's Australian, and all these other different types of pigments. And there's darker pinks and lighter pinks, and there's darker browns and lighter browns, and there's darker darks. You get the idea. So what I thought I would do today is I was going to do and paint this African lady behind me, and I thought it would be a fantastic idea if we actually brought together some different types of skin tones. So looking at the palette, I've got a range of colours in front of me, and I want to make a dark, mid and light tone in order for me to carry on painting this wonderful African lady that I've got in the background there. So without further ado, let's go down, have a look at the palette, and see if we can't mix some of these fantastic skin tones on this portrait. Okay, so I got some viridian green on the palette. I've also got some cadmium red. You could use crimson, ultramarine blue, some yellow ochre, some burnt umber, or you could use burnt umber, raw sienna, and raw umber, some titanium white. So normally the colours associated with the dark skin tones, the dark tones that you can find around the world, are alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, burnt umber, cadmium orange, cobalt blue, ivory black, raw umber, titanium white, Venetian red, and viridian green. I will put all those up on the screen for you. I'll go through them again. So normally the colours we can mix these tones with are alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, burnt umber, cadmium orange, cobalt blue, ivory black, raw umber, titanium white, Venetian red, and viridian green. Now you might not have all those colours. You might not have them, because I certainly haven't. But what have I got? Well, I've got what I've got. So if we want to mix an orange, we can mix yellow and red. And anyway, I'm going to go through the process. So the first thing I want to do, and I want to apologise firstly if my phone goes off, because I'm expecting to pick up my van today because it's being fixed. I want to get some burnt umber. I want to make some dark skin tone. So I'm going to get some burnt umber there, like that. Make sure I got a fair pile of burnt umber. You can always add more to the palette if we want to. Always add more to the palette. And then I'm going to get some red. I'll add a bit of red to that because we want to warm that. We want to warm that skin tone up. And you can see that I'm using a palette knife for this because it just makes life a lot easier for mixing paints. There you go. So I want to warm that up. So it's going a little bit more towards the raw sienna type of style, but there's a slightly darker tone. That's quite a nice warm colour, but we want it slightly darker than that. We want it slightly darker than that. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue, just a little bit of blue to that, just to make that slightly darker. There you go. I'm going to add some more burnt umber to this, and just leaving a little bit of burnt umber there, and I'll add a bit more red to it. There you go. This is my base mix. This is the base mix. We can lighten it down later. So this is all the paint I'm going to be using for this painting, hopefully. Remembering, or you can write it down, how you've mixed it. There we are. So I want to get that to the point where I want it. There we go. A nice dark colour. Let's add a little bit of viridian green into that now. So we got blue, we got red, and we got green, which makes brown in fact. That's quite a nice dark skin tone already. We need that bit of warmth to it. We need that bit of warmth to it. So let's add a little bit more red. And using a cadmium red. If you wanted to make something more like a crimson colour, what I suggest you do is get a little bit of cadmium red, if that's all you've got. A little bit of cadmium red like that, a little bit of burnt umber to it. And look at the way that actually warms or darkens that red up into a crimson type of colour. If you haven't got any crimson, that's the way to do it. So you can make quite a nice rich red with a little bit of burnt umber and a little bit of cadmium red. There we are. And again, if you wanted to make a yellow, an orange, try using some yellow ochre and just a tiny bit of red, tiny bit of red, and you can make a lovely skin tone orangey type of colour. There we go, look at that. It's a nice orange, but a very, very, very warm, orange, look. Or you can use cadmium light, cadmium medium, cadmium dark, yellow. So already we've got some wonderful skin tones developing. There, like that. So that's just using a little bit of red and a little bit of burnt umber. And then there's our base colour there, which we can add more yellow ochre to. Like that. We can cool that down with a bit of blue. Makes a lovely mid type of brown colour. You can add a little bit of green to that if you wanted to, just to give it that little bit of a tinge. And if that's not dark enough, just add a little bit more of your base mix to it. So it's just playing around with these colours. So there's a nice colour there. And we can add a little bit of our base mix then into this yellow ochre and red. And we can play around with that. And don't forget, unless you're doing something that you want accurate, if you're doing an accurate portrait, then you want to match the skin tones. Take some photographs of your subject, study your subject really well, try and match and marry the skin tones to the photograph. If you're working from a photograph, a lot of artists work from photographs, and I tend to use photographs a lot in my portraiture, and I find that mixing skin tones ahead of time helps. If you're worried about acrylic drying, then get yourself a fine mist bottle, something like that. I'm not going to spray this because this has got other stuff in it. This has got alcohol spray now actually for cleaning my pallets, but you've got a little mister bottle. I've got one here somewhere, I just don't know where I put it. Oh, there it is. It's hiding over there, look, it's hiding. So you want one of these little mister bottles and just keep misting down your palette like that. And that'll be sufficient to stop it from drying. So just using your base mix, which is your darker colour, and then you can get these wonderful skin tone type colours. There we are. Let's add a little bit base mix now into our red. So let's make this a little bit warmer, because that's slightly green and this is slightly warm. So in other words, one's warmer, one's cooler. So one's more red and the other one's more green. So we need to balance that off. And this is a nice way to mix some African skin tone colours. And you can darken them or lighten them, whichever suits your subject the best. And I'll be looking into more skin tones at a later series or a later episode. I should say, not a series. There we go. If you wanted to darken that a little bit, then if you've got any, I suggest you get some ivory black. The only ivory black that I've got, because I only use and I only mix by hand Mars black. I don't use ivory black very much, so that's why I tend to buy my ivory black in. And this is a Winsor & Newton Galleria range, which is quite good for what you want, and this has lasted me years. I only want a little spot of black like that, and a little bit of ivory black, just a touch. Don't want to spoil the colour, just to darken that down a bit. There we are, just to add it in more of a shade of a colour, rather than, we don't want to destroy that colour. We just want to darken it, maybe like that. There we are. We can add a bit of that black into our darkest dark colour there, like that. So we've got a dark, we've got a dark colour. There you go, nice dark skin tone. Then we go into a dark warm skin tone, that's slightly warmer. And then we've got our cooler skin tone, which we can darken if we want to. We won't know until we start putting paint to canvas. And then we got our lighter skin tone, and of course you can add a little bit of white if you wanted to any of these colours. If you wanted to put a highlight in, you could lighten that up. Obviously you could see the red coming through that one. If you wanted to lighten this one up, you could just add a little touch of white to that. You don't want a lot, just to sparkle that up. And you can see the different type of skin tones that you can get just by playing around and experimenting. And this is what my channel is all about, really. Is just, don't be afraid of anything, have a go, because if you don't try, you don't know. There you go. So there's a few examples of some darker skin tones that you could use in a portrait painting. So let's have a look at what they actually look like if we're going to paint them. So I'm just going to grab any old brush. I'm just going to moisten that down, and let's go into my darker colour. And you can got a nice dark tone there, and you can build this up in layers. As the layers dry, you can intensify that, but that's quite an opaque colour there. And then we've got our warmer skin tone there, which you can see it's a lot redder. It's a lot redder then. So that's a nice skin tone just on its own. It's a little bit of warmth coming through there. Just wash my brush very quickly, because I don't want to put too much of that colour into the next colour. This is what I would say would be roughly my mid-tone type of colour. And as you can see, that's a wonderful skin tone, as far as the darker skin tones that we see around the world are. There we go. It's quite warm, it's quite nice. And then we got our cooler type of skin tone. Again, this has got a little bit of the green in it. There we are. And if we wanted to lighten that up, we could add some white into that if we wanted to. Just put a few highlights into there, like that. There's us added white to it. We just add a little bit of white to this one, and you can see the pink coming through there. My paint is drying a little bit more than I wanted it to at the moment, so I'm just going to add a little bit of red, a little bit of that other colour with a bit of white, just to show you. You can see the pinkness already coming through on that one. So you don't need a lot of white, so you've got to be careful. You don't need a lot of white. And our darker colour, then there with a bit of white as well. So you've got four colours there that we could play with as far as our painting is concerned, and I think that's the way to do it. And experiment. Buy yourself a book. I tell you the type of books I buy. These books, these colour mixing recipes for oils and acrylics, and they work really well actually. You've got a wide variety of colours there. Now if you haven't got all the colours that they require for you to mix these base tones, then that's not a problem, because you should know that you can mix most colors from the basic color recipes, and this also explains then color theory as well, which if you're a beginner, that's what you really need, is something like that. Reference is always good. The ISBN number for that one is there if you want to just make a note of that. There we are. It is. I'll put it down by there for you. That's the ISBN number. Go on to Amazon, anything like that, into a bookshop, and you'll find them, and they're not that expensive really for what they are. So hope that's helped. Thank you very much for joining me on the studio today. And right, I'm gonna start this painting before my paint dries.